Hey, this is Dr. Chad Kish. Welcome back to Module 3 for your PEP 350 Methods of Teaching PE class. This lesson is on lesson planning, and it goes into detail about preparing a quality lesson. This may be a review for some students, but it is going to go into detail on exactly what should be done in the lesson planning process for preparing a quality physical education lesson. All right, so a lot of this information came from the Dynamic Physical Education for Elementary School Children, Chapter 3, Introduction to Teaching Physical Education Principles and Strategies, Chapter 8. These are the two textbooks used in the EDU 417 courses, as well as my multiple decades of experience teaching physical education in the K through 12 and college setting. So what are we going to learn in Module 3 today? At the end of this module, you should be able to do the following things. Discuss and apply your knowledge and skills necessary to develop detailed lesson plans for physical education and health. You should also be able to discuss the components of a lesson plan, the descriptive part as well as the instructional part, and some of those subcomponents. You should be able to apply lesson planning knowledge and techniques to develop a thoughtful sequence of aligned instructional activities for a lesson plan. And you should be able to use research methods to apply lesson planning techniques from your background in this lecture, as well as the previous Module 1 and 2, in the development of 4 specific lesson plans. One for elementary, one for middle school, one for secondary PE, and a health-related lesson plan for either middle school or high school. So you'll do the research activity for that, and in a future module, you will actually put together those 4 detailed lesson plans. So let's get started and talk about a lesson plan. Remember, a lesson plan is a document that's really a planning tool for you as a teacher to outline the scope and sequence of learning experiences. Remember, this lesson plan might be district or school required and use a specific template. You might use the template that you've used here at Lincoln to really help plan out your activities. Some schools allow you to use your own lesson planning tool, so you'll just really have to figure out what you're going to use in your lesson plan. Some of them might come from a curriculum guide for the school, what your principal or district wants. And if they leave it up to you, your first year of teaching, you should really strive to probably use the lesson plan template I've taught you to use through your EDU classes so you can really be fully prepared to teach the lesson. Remember, an important section of the lesson plan is detailing the performance objective or objectives of the lesson. All right, this section includes not only the 3-part performance objective and the task, condition, and criteria method. You'll also include things such as essential questions. These are questions students can ask themselves if they're learning within the lesson. You might include things such as your GLEs or GLOs, show me standards, or your district curriculum codes for this lesson. Remember, we've wrote many 3-part performance objectives as well as essential questions throughout your EDU 417 P and Q sections. All right, lesson plans, remember, they detail the various parts of the lesson, including your instructional sequence, your list of activities, and a time plan. We need to remember to have aligned assessments, or your assessments aligned with your performance objectives. And if you provide a well-written, observable performance objective, that really gives you the guidance for your assessment. And then, do we provide a variety of adaptations? Remember, you might not use this full lesson plan in teaching. You're probably going to teach from a card, a note card, or one sheet. But a lesson plan will help you plan the lesson, be really prepared for everything that comes along, and it provides a written form of legal evidence of instruction that you can turn in to either your administrator if needed. Your district can use those as evidence of instruction, as well as you could use it at some litigation if you get sued. One example would be, oh, nobody taught us the safety stuff. If you have the equipment safety stuff in your lesson plan, you could show that it was planned. And even though people might not remember what happened 5 years ago, if a lawsuit comes up, you can show that it was planned and more than likely taught just by showing your lesson plan. So what are the various components of a lesson plan? First of all, you have your descriptive part that really brings together our background information and how we'll get started with the instructional part. So your descriptive part, you put down your equipment needs, and remember, make sure you put down everything, the number you need, all kinds of stuff. Then you will talk about our safety concerns. The safety concerns could connect to the equipment, or it could just connect to people's body and how some inherent risk to the activity and things we need to do to participate or provide our students a safe way to participate within the activity. Next is your performance objectives. This is the task condition criteria. You might have one or two of these. And it's really important on this to have that well written and thoughtful, because it's going to lead into your whole instructional portion of the lesson plan. And then any curriculum information you might need. Is this a specific unit? Is this a lesson title? Is this an activity? What's the grade level? What standard does this align to? Your NASP standards or your GLEs or GLOs? All right. So, and your school might have specific standards or show me standards that you're connecting to. So this would be the very first part of the lesson plan and your description. The next part is the components of a lesson plan. This is the instructional part. You've seen the lesson plan template. You might want to go ahead and print that out and have it available to you to take some notes as we go through this lecture. But your instructional components involve things such as your scope and sequence of instructional activities. This is how you will teach the lesson. I usually do this in a scheduled type of section. All right. What's the demonstration and explanation? What is my closed practice setting? And working on form and initiating the activity. What is my open setting practice, where we're trying to start bringing in some variables and maybe doing some group things where we're working with a partner or a small group. Then how do I practice the activity, give students a chance to build some skills through repetition? And then move on to some kind of competitive or game-like or cooperative type of activity to put everything together. That's your scope and sequence of instructional activities. Next, what is your organizational strategies? Do you have a diagram or a format or formations? Could a substitute follow these? You'll probably map them out with a legend and kind of explain some things. Your time plan is your detailed schedule that really lays out your scope and sequence of instruction. We'll start with our warm-up. We'll move on to our demonstration and explanation, and so on. What teaching cues do I use? What are those key phrases we're going to use to teach this specific activity? Are we going to talk about the beef concept? All right. Are we going to talk about the heads-up tackling if we're coaching football? What is our anticipated feedback and corrective actions? This is, we'll look at the most difficult part of the task that students may struggle with, and we will provide some anticipated feedback to help correct those actions. This is also where we'll consider the knowledge of performance and knowledge of results and tactical type of cues. The assessment plan, how are we going to assess to see if students performed what we laid down as our performance objective? Remember, your three-part performance objective and your assessment plan should be aligned and almost mirror each other. What modifications and adaptations do we need to provide? All right. What about struggling learners, advanced learners, adapted learners that may have a disability, our varying range of abilities? All right. If you put some thought into that, when it happens, you're prepared. And then how are we going to close our lesson? Does our lesson closure include our assessment, or is it tying everything together and giving opportunities for students to explore? So those are our two parts, our descriptive part and our instructional part. Let's go in a little bit more detail of each part. Equipment. First of all, list all of your equipment. Be specific, provide your quantity, consider your class size, consider what might be different. Next, detail all your safety instructions for your equipment. Then, how do you consider distribution and collection? Do you use a captain or a star to get the equipment? The best way generally is to put your equipment out, all right, around the perimeter of your activity, but you have to instruct your students not to mess with it before it's time. So that takes a little bit of work and preparation. But equipment around the perimeter ready to go so students can grab it when it's time is really the best method to use if your students won't mess with it before time. All right, so you got to consider the safety end on that. And then have your equipment prepared prior to teaching. This is probably several days in advance, making sure the balls are aired up, you have enough equipment to provide your lesson. All right. Your time plan. This is a full and detailed schedule of your lesson. You'll start out with your warm-up. Remember, you'll probably have a warm-up routine, but don't forget to add in sections directly related to your activity. If you're going to do throwing, add in additional arm stretches or warm-up. If you're going to do kicking, do additional leg stretches or warm-ups. Consider your dynamic and static warm-ups. Remember, dynamic warm-ups include progressive movements such as walks, jumps, hops, skips, lunges, and other movements to help elevate body core temperature and increase range of motion, as well as getting students ready for movement activity. And then, like I said, ensure a couple of your activities are aligned or directly related to your upcoming activity. Have your introduction. All right, in your introduction, what's our performance objective, task, condition, criteria method? What is our essential question or questions? This is what the students can ask themselves if they can do at the end of the lesson. And then how do we demonstrate and explain what our task is for the day? Then we should really get into the instruction of the activity, and this is where we have some instruction and feedback and things like that. Let's teach the form of our activity. This is to the individual. Provide some kind of guided practice. This is individual and or group practice. And remember, provide an opportunity for activity moving from closed to open variables on our continuum. And then don't forget, we need to have some kind of an assessment involved, which might be part of the closure, or the closure may be different. And then at the end, we need to understand and find out, did the students meet their performance objective? Can they answer yes to the essential questions? Can they show you that they can do the essential questions? All right, so that should all be involved in our time plan. What's the floor plan? The floor plan should include various detailed diagrams. So consider our formations and diagrams that would be important. Remember, go back to the lesson on formations and non-instructional tasks. Provide a legend. What is a legend? Remember, on a map, is the C coach, is the S student, is the C a captain, is the T the teacher, is a X something, is a circle the ball, right? What do the arrows mean? And remember, we do this because we want to understand, could a substitute teacher follow these diagrams? So that's important when you're building your diagrams. Could, if you have multiple teachers in a district and you're building the lesson plan to use district-wide, could other teachers follow these diagrams? What are our instructional activities? First of all, we start with instant activities. These are activities students do when they first arrive in the gym. All right, that's going to be different between elementary school students and high school students. Some teachers, especially at the elementary level, use instant activities, various tag games to warm up or excite students to get a little bit of energy out and get them moving around. You should list this on your lesson plan. They really may or may not be used because of time constraints in your actual teaching. It just depends. Do you have a transition activity if you're teaching class and students arrive? This happens a lot in elementary school. The teacher brings them down a minute or two early. Can you have them do something on an area of the gym? Do you have different things on the wall and they get to pick out an activity and do them? Right? In high school, or in middle school even, think about when students get done dressing out. A lot of teachers want a quiet classroom, but the best thing to do is provide some of the equipment and give them an activity that they can do while they're waiting the other minute or two for some of the students to finish dressing out. This could be a challenge because you might have to stand in a doorway to supervise both activities, but allows students to work on maybe a review of last lesson If a last lesson was dribbling a soccer ball, put some soccer balls and cones out, let them dribble around until you get ready to get into the activity. This could also be a great chance for a review and kind of move yourself right into your set induction. So what is a set induction? That's your introduction to the lesson and activity. It might be a quick opening statement that informs students of the lesson focus. You might show a brief video on your phone on the wall. There's a lot of technology in the classroom of an expert performer, somebody that's a professional or Olympic athlete to excite some interest. Or you might even relate this how it ties to the previous lesson. This is generally where you're going to detail your performance objective, right? This may be the actual performance objective, big ideas, essential questions, or goal statements, or it might be changed a little bit to be in a language that students can understand. So you might have the task and condition, and you might not give them the criteria till later in the day. All right? So it could be really goal statements for the students. And then explain once again what the essential question is. Elementary students always come in and say, what are we going to do today? The best thing to do is tell them the essential question. This is a question a student could ask themselves about the activity. Hey, at the end of the lesson today, you're going to ask yourself, can I dribble the ball around these cones in less than 30 seconds? If the answer is yes, you were successful today. All right? So that is the instructional activities. Remember, let's go into essential questions a little bit because sometimes these are forgot. But you should have at least 2 essential questions on your lesson plan daily. These could be things that are written up on your whiteboard or you ask your students repeatedly. The essential questions should be directly aligned with your performance objective. And remember, this essential question is written in action language for the student. This means it should be a question that asks what the student should be able to do at the end of the lesson. All right? Can I dribble around the cones with a soccer ball and make it down and back in 30 seconds or less? All right? You should ask these periodically during your lesson. You could ask them at the beginning of the lesson. You could use them when they're transitioning between activities. And then the students should ask themselves at the lesson closure. And then you might even have students answer the question in your closure and provide a demonstration to show you that they can do them. What are some instructional activities? All right, let's move into discussing these. First of all, we need to consider our content development, and there are 4 different areas you should have on your lesson plan. Informing. Remember, this is your explanation and demonstrations. How are you going to initially explain and demonstrate the skill? Do we use a video? Are you using an expert performer? Are you using yourself or one of your students? And then we explain it. Do we want to break it down into 4 parts, or do we just want to explain the task generally? An extension is the task or activities we use to practice the skill. All right? This would be, we're going to teach students in a closed setting, move on the continuum to open setting, adding in some variables. What are refinements? This is information to assist students in learning the skill. This might be a catchy phrase in learning the skill or parts of the skill. Right? This might be the beef format of shooting, a free throw, balance, eyes, elbow, and follow through. This is really what some of the teachers are going to use for feedback to help with error correction and improving performance. And then last is our applications. These are going to be the challenges to promote practice and improvement of the skills. This is where we really move on that continuum closer to the open skill practice. We're going to add in some challenges. We might add in movement, speed, defense, or a build-up game. Right? Consider your organizational strategies. Remember, it's important to consider how are we going to group students, how are we going to collect and distribute equipment, and how we handle our transitions from one activity to the other. And this is really key as you advance in teaching to not lose time in transitions. How can we make them smooth? Let's discuss our feedback now. Feedback is critical. We've discussed this in detail in some of our other modules, but I want to review here again. Teaching cues. These are the important fundamental teaching points of the activities. You'll probably list about 3 of those on each lesson plan. This will be concepts such as bend your knees, extend your arm, step with the opposite foot, Put your non-dominant shoulder towards the target. All right? Release as you step. Transfer your weight. Hold your follow-through. A lot of different teaching points on different activities. Next is tactical cues. Remember, what is a tactical cue? That is something that you help correct results or outcome errors. This is where knowledge of results comes in. All right? Is your throw too high? What can you do to lower it? You could bend your knees or lower your release point. That's good. That is a tactical cue. Think about a tactical cue in gameplay or strategy. If the defender is deciding to guard you and your teammate's open, what should you do? I should probably pass to my teammate. If we're on a 2-on-1 advantage situation and the defender's in the middle, what should I do? I should try to get the defender to commit to either me or my teammate and then make a determination if I'm the person that attempts to score or I pass to my teammate. So tactical cues work on results. We want to overcome outcome errors. Corrective actions go back to knowledge of performance. Knowledge of performance. We're looking to how do you teach and correct form or help a performer overcome performance or form errors. Once again, this is knowledge of performance. Think of form, form, form. That's important in teaching anyway, getting the muscle memory on the right form. Your shot seemed a little bit flat. Doesn't really matter if it went in or not. What can you do to correct this? Oh, you can bend your knees a little bit more. You can put a little more force into your lift. You could hold your follow-through higher. You could imagine shooting out of a telephone booth to get your release higher, right? It might also be that your elbow wasn't underneath, so your lever action wasn't correct, all right? What did you notice about performing that shot? If the student tells you it's flat, then ask them, what do you do next time to make it correct? So one thing you want to do is, as performers move on to competent and advanced, you want them to help coach themselves or correct performance errors themselves. All right? So remember, effective feedback should be regular, timely, accurate, varied, and focused on improving either results or performance. All right, when you build your lesson plans, adaptations and assessments are important. So consider your strategies or modifications for diverse learners. All right, you should list modifications for a special needs student on your lesson plan. All right, there's a separate lesson to discuss modifications and adaptations before the lesson plans are due. Make sure you go over that for a review. All right, remember, these strategies for diverse learners, especially adaptive learners, are important due to IDEA, all right, the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act, and to meet these IEP requirements. So we need to make sure we document them. Remember, the IEP is the Individualized Education Program. So they need to be documented on your lesson plan. So list any modifications for special needs students on your lesson plan. List modifications. Next, you want to list modifications for diverse learners. All right. So what I want you to do is think of diverse learners as somebody that is struggling to learn or an advanced learner for your activity. All right. So you should write two different ones of these. What would you do if somebody that's struggling to pick up, that's a little bit behind, that is not quite a competent learner? And then write something you would do to challenge an advanced learner. All right? Those are strategies or modifications for diverse learners. All right? Next is your assessment plan. All right, in your assessment plan, we'll have another separate lesson to review everything we talked about for assessment, some different strategies. They might be both formal or informal. They might be observational or performance-based. All right? But remember, they must be aligned with both the objective, the performance objective of the lesson, and your instruction. They should be very specific. They should be observable. All right, remember our observable language. And then you need to figure out how you're going to record them. Is there a score sheet? All right, are we using a rubric? Are we using a checklist? Are we using a video analysis? So that's all critical in your assessment plan. So remember, that is how you as a teacher know if your students are meeting or have met the learning objective. Remember, during the lesson, we want to use formative techniques, observations used a lot in PE, but we can use some other things. And at the end of the lesson, or summative assessment, we want to see if the students have met the learning objective before we move on to the next one. So it's critical to plan both of these assessments when you're doing your lesson plan. Moving on to your lesson closure. This is a wrap-up that concludes the lesson. We want to summarize the important concepts or skills students have learned in the lesson. This may involve an assessment strategy. We could be aligned with and may include essential questions and performance objectives. All right. We're going to inform students of what they can look forward to in the next lesson. All right. And we might consider how we're going to motivate the students to use the activity outside of the class. So remember, this is important in the continued development of skills and developing use of these skills outside the gym or outside of the school. Why do we do this? We want to promote lifelong fitness for students. All right. Remember, in a lesson closure, we might do an assessment strategy. Say we've already done our assessment that's related to our performance objective. We've seen and documented students to see if they could do the dribble weave between cones and take a time. But we might do a questioning session or interviewing various students, have them provide a demonstration. We could do an exit ticket. We could provide them homework. So don't forget to do a lot of these things for physical education. Here are some lesson plan tips. Use a small card as a summary to teach from, or one sheet. You probably shouldn't use your whole lesson plan document. You'll review that before you teach the day before or the morning of, but you'll really use your small card in action in the gym. Try to get a whiteboard in the gym to detail your objectives, essential questions, and outline your task for the day. Students always want to see what they're going to do today. All right. Reflect on each lesson after it's taught, and then make some notes right there on the lesson plan for future use. All right. Always save your lesson plans. You might need these for legal documentation. All right. And then have a rainy day, loss of gym, substitute teacher lesson plans developed and placed in a binder ready to use so you could pull those out in a pinch. These would be lesson plans that you might have taught early on. So if you have a substitute teacher and they're not an expert PE teacher, it might not be good for them to teach your lesson that introduces the volleyball serve that's going to be critical for the volleyball unit. You might have them, if it's one day, do a activity that you've done before. One I used to always do, we do it the first week of school, is we play frisbee horseshoes, because we were building up frisbee horseshoes and tossing with a partner into then playing frisbee golf as well as playing ultimate frisbee. So my substitute teacher one-day emergency lesson plan might be frisbee horseshoes because the kids have played it before. And it's a pretty simple activity to use. So here's your to-do list. Do Module 3 lesson planning. All right. Do your assignment, your lesson plan research. I'll show you that assignment here again in a second. We've detailed that in Module 1 and 2. And then submit that lesson plan research assignment to Canvas. Then you should look at Module 6 for culminating assignments. All right. These are going to be associated with this lesson planning assignment you turn in. So take your lesson plan research and use the feedback from that assignment to start the development of 4 detailed lesson plans. All right. You'll turn them in Module 6 as a culminating activity. Remember, there are going to be 4 separate assignments. It's going to be elementary, middle school, high school, and then your health lesson. You'll develop 4 detailed lesson plans based on your lesson plan research and the feedback from that, and then submit it as a culminating assignment. So remember, here's your assignment, lesson plan research. We've detailed it in the previous couple modules. List your lesson plan information for each of the following. Give me a number 1, 2, 3, and 4. Elementary's 1, middle school's 2, high school's 3, health, either middle school or high school, is 4. Under each one, I need an A, B, C, and D. So you'll have 1, A, B, C, and D, 2, A, B, C, and D, and so on. A, give me a sentence explaining your lesson concept. B, explain the curriculum model you'll use. All right, the curriculum models 1 through 8. We detailed that in a previous lesson. All right, letter C, give me your main NASP standard, and then under letter D, about a paragraph describing the lesson. Explain what it is and how you will teach it. All right, so here is your assignment format and example. Number 1, elementary lesson plan. A, here's your lesson concept, about a sentence describing it. This should probably really be tied to a GLE. All right. B, what curriculum model are we going to use? The skill theme approach. All right. C, which NASP standard is the overarching standard? We're really working on motor skills, so that would be NASP standard number 1. And then D, here's a full description of the activity. So that's your assignment format. Make sure you get that in by the deadline. And here's just for a review if you need it. Here are the 8 curriculum models that you would use in letter C to explain the model you're going to teach from. All right, if you have any questions, shoot me an email. Hopefully this is a good full overall review of the lesson planning process. It prepares you to develop your full lesson plan. And next time we will move into some adaptations and modifications in the next module. All right, have a great day. Appreciate everything you do. Remember, developing a detailed lesson plan does take some time, but the more time you do a full formatted lesson plan, the better you're going to be when you go to teaching your lesson. And remember, here at Lincoln University, our goal is to teach you the skills, abilities, traits, and concepts to be a high quality, upper tier physical education teacher that's very dynamic and is student centered and focuses on principles and strategies of teaching the best way you can. All right, have a great day.